Well, I don't want to waste anybody's time too much, but I did bring some props with me.
Okay, let's see.
And I wanted to show you this one.
That's really cool.
Does anybody know what this is? Like, you probably guess what it is by looking at it.
Yeah.
Turtle shell?
It is a turtle shell. Do you know what kind of turtle shell this is?
It would be a completely random guess if I tried to guess.
Ooh,
Snapping turtle? I don't know.
That's a good guess, but actually it's not a snapping turtle. And I don't know if you can really tell virtually and like on the computer, but this is actually a map turtle.
Oh, cool. I can see
it. Hunter, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only 8 species of turtles in Ontario. The list most recently. But I wanted to show you this, and I mean, I could share the legend of the turtle, or how the sky woman falling, but you guys probably have already heard this one. Probably heard me tell it. But I wanted to just share the turtle shell, because there's stuff that on the turtle shell that you may not be aware that really is connected to Indigenous peoples. So on the top of the turtle shell, there are different areas, and they're called scutes. And right on the top, first of all, there's ones that go all the way around the turtle shell, and then there's some that right at the top. Most turtles have the same amount of scutes. The ones that are on the top, there's approximately about 13 of them.
Okay.
And the connection between the turtle and those 8 scutes, or those 13 scutes, is that in our culture, in our lunar year, we don't have 12. We actually have 13 in our lunar year. And each moon, each month signifies a certain event or a certain thing that's going to happen. So for example, June, we just had what you might have heard is the strawberry moon. So June will be the month that we go and actually pick strawberries. Okay, so we depend on the moons to let us know when things are going to happen, when there's different things going on. So that's the 13 moons that's represented on the top of the shell. Now the scutes that are on the round, does anybody know how many the scutes that are around here that go around the turtle? There's 28. Usually about 28 of them. And when we think about the woman, and we think about woman's menstrual cycle, we cycle every 28 days. And so that represents the woman's cycle. Every 28 days we will visit that grandmother moon will come and visit us. And we have a lot of things that interfere that cycle, like if you take a pill and that kind of thing, that will interfere. But typically, a woman will go through a cycle every 28 days. So that's the connection, a really important connection between the turtles and us Indigenous peoples. So when you hear people talk about Turtle Island, we know about the story of Turtle Island and how that is connected, how a lot of cultures, not just when we talk about the Wendat people, that story, there's a lot of cultures that believe that the world was created on the back of a turtle. So this animal is very, very highly respected in the culture. A lot of times you will actually see people saving turtles, and absolutely save them. If you see one crossing the road, just remember to help it cross in the direction that it came. Because if you turn it around and put it back the opposite way, that turtle will go back. The turtles know where they want to go. So what we want to do is just help it across the road without it getting hit by a car. Okay? So that's the turtle. I wanted to share that with you. I don't know if I ever really talked about much about turtles when I worked at the museum, but we really should be talking more about the importance of the turtles and what it signifies, those scutes at the top. Okay?
Cool.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago when I was working at St. Marie among the Hurons, I was leading my group back in, and one of the kids, they were collecting rocks, as a lot of kids do, and one kid came up to me and he goes, I thought he had a rock, but it was when and it was only like this big. It was about as big as a loony, not even. And he goes, "Is it dead?" And I'm like, and I looked closely and I went, "Oh my God, it's a turtle." It was a painted turtle, and it was only about that big. And anyway, they brought it to, it must have came from the Weimarsh, so they brought it to a safer zone where it wouldn't get stepped on and that kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
But I like those turtles and help save the turtles because they're all at risk of either being endangered or species at risk. So make sure you help protect those turtles. The other thing I wanted to show you, the show and tell, is this right here. And I don't know if I know there was one at the museum. And it's funny because when I talk about the museum, I still say we, even though I don't work there anymore. Like, we had one of these at the museum. We had one of these on display.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has ever seen or know what this is, but it's a moose call. I don't know how to call moose. This one actually was made by Hunter. So
cool.
Hunter, for the new person is my daughter, and Hunter and I do crafts together, and we opened up a store here at the Midland Cultural Center. But last year she was working as the Indigenous Heritage Specialist at St. Marie among the Hurons. And so she got to work closely with one of the other Indigenous staff who actually builds birch bark canoes. So they had a whole bunch of birch bark, and so she got creative and made a moose call. So this one's made out of really thick birch bark, and it's sewn together with the spruce root. And then it's just got a nice little leather strap to tie around. And then there's some artwork on the bottom too. She did a bit of etching in the actual bark itself.
Cool.
Yeah, some moose tracks. So Hunter's getting really crafty. She's also picked up the art of moose hair tufting, which you'll probably see whenever she is on her session.
Yeah.
So I won't steal too much of her thunder and let her kind of do it. I know how to make moose hair tufting, but I'm not the moose hair tufter. She's actually the moose hair tufter in the family now. So, and she's really good at it. We're actually doing workshop at the Georgian Bay District Secondary School with some of the Indigenous students doing moose hair tufting.
Cool.
We're going there tomorrow morning to finish up. So, did you want to hear legend, even though there's only the three of you? Okay,
Yeah,
I'm going to.
because I was gonna say, this is being recorded anyway, so we can talk about it later. Yeah,
okay,
we could put it out in the world still anyway. So.
Okay, well, let me talk to you a little bit about the birch bark then, because let's do that legend first.
Okay.
Everybody here knows, well, I'm hoping that everybody here knows what a birch tree looks like. Scientifically, the birch trees are actually really, really an important tree in our culture. We use that bark for making moose collars. We use that bark for making baskets. We use that bark for making canoes. So it's really important, an important part of our life. If you look on the inside of the birch, that's actually the inside of this moose collar is what you would see on the outside of the tree, the white part. Okay, so the part that you see here is actually the part that would be on the inside of the tree. Okay, and if ever you're somewhere and you are exposed to the sun rays and you don't have sunscreen, you can go up to this tree and rub your hands on that white powder, and you'll get that white powder on you, and you can actually use it as SPF. It'll act just like a sun blocker, so it should help you. So if you ever are missing your sunscreen, that's what you can use. But now traditionally, the birch bark trees didn't have any marks on them. In fact, there was a time when the trees were able to roam freely, meaning that they were able to come out of the ground and run around, and they were able to speak to each other. They can still speak to each other. We don't understand their language. Trees don't come out of the roots anymore and run around because us as humans would be too afraid of that. So they just tend to stay in their own place as they live. But there was one tree in this big, beautiful forest that was sort of one of the oldest trees. She was one of the tallest trees, and she was actually a pine tree, an evergreen tree. And overruled the forest, and not meaning that she told everybody what to do, but just overruled it, making sure that there was balance and harmony and everybody was getting along. Now, the animals and the trees all did get along, and it was a beautiful, spring morning, much like today, and they all would get up and they would run around and they would play games with each other. And one of the favorite games by all the animals in the trees was a game called hide and go seek. Very similar to hide and go seek anyway. They probably had a different name for it. And so all the animals in the trees gathered, and when they looked around, they noticed that Birch was missing. And before, Birch used to be this big white with no marks on her at all. So when they looked around and they saw that Birch was missing, they said, well, we can't start playing this game without Birch because she will be very upset. We need to go find Birch. So Wolf was the first one to volunteer, and he's a very fast runner. So he says, I'm going to go run out and I'll go find Birch. So he started running out, and as he's running, he's screaming, Birch, 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 where are you, Birch? And he's screaming and he's looking all over for Birch. And he sees Birch way down by the lake, almost like the lakes that you see in. And as he was getting closer, he was calling, Birch, oh, there you are, Birch. And as he's getting closer, he noticed that Birch wasn't moving. She didn't look around. She didn't acknowledge him or nothing. And as he got closer, he said, Birch, oh, there you are. Thank goodness. Come on, we're all going to start a good game of hide and go seek. And she turned around and she looked at Wolf and she said, I am never playing any of those games anymore. Now, Wolf was a little bit surprised to hear that coming from Birch. She was always a very gentle soul of a tree. So he was a little bit surprised, and he said, Birch, what's the matter with you? What seems to be the problem? So what was happening was Birch was staring at herself. She was down by the lake, and it was a very calm day. And when it's a really calm day down by the lakes, you can see your reflection, almost like a mirror. So that's what Birch was doing down there. She was staring at her own reflection, admiring how beautiful she was. And when Wolf turned to her and she said, I am never playing any of those games. Look at me. I am the most beautiful one here. I should be the ruler and the queen of this forest, not big old pine tree. So Birch was a little bit upset, and Wolf didn't really know what to do. So he kind of stepped back and he thought, you know what, Birch, I'll just leave you for the day. So he went back and he told all the other animals, he says, I don't know what's wrong, but she's at the lake. She's staring at her reflection. She's not very happy. And he kind of explained what she said. And so all the animals thought, well, you know what, maybe she just needs a day to just be it by herself, think things through. And they carried on with their games, and then maybe we'll ask her again tomorrow. So that's what they did. They carried on with their games. They enjoyed their day. They had a beautiful afternoon. And the next day came along. Beautiful, beautiful spring morning. So they decided, you know what, let's all gather and play that game again. So they all gathered up and they played the game, and they noticed that Birch was still missing. So Wolf, this time, he said, you know what, I tried to talk to her yesterday. I don't know if I want to go and talk to her. So this time Fox says, you know what, I'll go. Fox and Birch were good, close friends. And he says, I'll go and talk to her. I'll go talk to her. So he ran, and Fox are really fast runners once they get going. So he ran, and he was running through the bush, and he knew where to go. He went by the lake, and he's like, oh, there you are, Birch. Birch, you're still over there. Okay, come on, we're going to play a game. And she didn't move. So he got closer. And when he got closer, he's like, Birch, come on, we're going to play. And she got angry, and she turned to Fox, and she said, I thought I told Wolf yesterday that I wasn't playing any more games. Look at me. I am the most beautiful one here in this forest. I should be the queen and the ruler of this forest. So again, Fox was a little bit taken back. He was surprised to hear that coming from Birch. So he went back and he told the animals, he says, yeah, something's not right. Something's wrong with Birch. So throughout the next few days, some of the other animals went, Some of the other trees went to go and try and talk to her, but they all had the same reaction from Birch. She stood there in the same spot for days and days, staring at her own reflection, saying that she was the most beautiful one and that she should be the ruler. So at this time, it was making all the trees and animals uncomfortable, and they really didn't know what to do. And they said, you know what, maybe we need to go wake up Pine Tree and let her know what's going on. Maybe Pine Tree should go talk to her because, again, Pine Tree's the oldest. So they went and they said, Pine Tree, we hate to bother you with this, but there's something wrong with Birch. We don't know. We're going to have to, we just don't know. So Pine Tree says, it's okay. I'll go and talk to her. So Pine Tree hadn't come out of the ground in quite some time. So it took a bit of effort to get her roots out of the ground and shaking them off as she's doing that. But she managed to do that. And she's slowly walking down by the lake. And she said, Birch, Birch, very, very gentle, calm voice. Birch, what seems to be the problem? And Birch turned around, and Pine Tree was so big that Birch actually had to kind of look up like this. And she said, I told those animals and those trees I weren't playing any more games anymore. Look at me. I am the most beautiful one here. I should be the ruler and the queen of this forest. And Pine Tree says, it's not like that. And just as she said that, Birch Tree was going to go and attack Pine Tree. But Pine Tree, with its big, long needles, thought it was time to teach Birch a lesson and started to hit Birch back and forth, up and down, all around, and taught her a lesson that everybody's beautiful, no matter what, if you have marks or not, everybody's equally beautiful. And to this day, any birch tree that you see, that you come across, will have all of those marks still left behind from that pine tree. And I challenge you to go out and see if you can find a birch tree that doesn't have any marks. You will find young saplings that don't have any marks because they do have to grow into them, but they will grow into them. But that's how birch tree got its marks on her. So that's the story of Birch.
Cool.
I really like telling stories. And one of the things that I've actually been trying to do in my spare time, that I have a lot of, because I really like stars, and everybody who knows me knows that I really like stars. And when the museum started bringing in the Star Lab many years ago, that was like one of my favorite things that I loved doing. And I actually really got interested in learning more about the stars and different constellations and star stories. The problem was at that time is all of the stories that we were learning were of all European or Greek mythology, as we all are familiar with them, like the Orion and that. So I've made it for myself is to do my own research and try and find some of those Anishinaabe stories. And they are out there. And I'm starting to learn a little bit about them, but I'm still just learning. So for example, in the fall time, there is a constellation that is actually shaped as a moose. And in Ojibwe, we call it moose. And hunters actually would look for that particular constellation. And that's when they would know that it was time to go and hunt. And then they would, follow those stars to do those things. One of the stars that we're all familiar with is Sirius, which is the brightest star in the northern hemisphere that belongs to a constellation called Canis Major, which is the big dog. What I've recently learned about that particular star is that in archaic Algonquin Anishinaabe people, is that was the star that our souls and our spirits would go and look for, that would take us on that journey back to the Creator. So that was a very important star to look for. The other thing is when we see that Milky Way in the night sky, that is the path to Creator. That's the path to the afterlife. So we look for that path too. So I'm still learning all about our Anishinaabe stories, and like I said, there's a lot. I'm Algonquin. Algonquin, Ojibwe, very, very similar. So I would like to learn Algonquin stories, but so I am learning the Anishinaabe, like the Ojibwe stories as well. There's a fella that I know who lives up in Sudbury. He's actually works for Laurentian University, who's taken upon himself. He's actually getting to be really, really good at sharing these stories and knowing a lot of the constellations in the night sky. But that great bear, that big bear that we see, is still a bear. And that bear, in a lot of constellations in the Northern Hemisphere, a lot of cultures see that as a bear as well. So that bear was thrown up in the night sky because he was just a curious little bear. And I love little black bears. And I like talking about bears because in Ontario, we have 2 species of bears. And it's funny because I was just talking to this, I had a workshop this morning. And a lot of people don't realize that we have polar bears in Ontario, but we do. And when you look at a map of Ontario, it's big. So when I say Northern Ontario, I'm not talking about Sudbury, North Bay. I'm not even talking about Thunder Bay. I'm not even talking about places that you can drive to. You have to fly into these communities. And when you look at a map of Ontario, it's very, very big. And so in Northern Ontario, there are polar bears. But those black bears, a long time ago, our ancestors used to watch them. And they used to observe what the bears were eating, what the bears were digging for, because the bears knew what was medicine. They knew what was plants, what could be edible, what could be eaten. So that's what the importance of a black bear is. A lot of people will hunt bears. We don't hunt or eat bears. There is too much similarities between a black bear and a human. Even if you open up a bear's mouth and look at their teeth, they have a very similar shape of teeth as humans. If you see a hunter hunting a bear and you see it hanging as they're skinning it, it is very eerie looking. It resembles a human very, very closely. So I have too much respect for bears to hunt and eat them. Some people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're controlling our bear population as well too. So because we have a lot of bears. Last summer we had a bear in our backyard in Wabashin. We had to shoo him away. So, but I like those bears. So that bear that sits up in the night sky, before he was actually roaming here on Earth, and he roamed here on Earth, and he kind of was a very cool bear, and he walked around. But there was one particular area that the animals were told they couldn't go in. It was like a beautiful forest, and they were told never to go in there. And it was sort of like enchanted. There was something magical about this forest. So the animals never questioned it, never went in. But this one day, this bear, he said, you know what? I am really hungry, and it looks like there's some really good berries just over there. I'm going to go and eat them. So he went into the forest and he ate the berries. And because this forest hadn't really been, the animals hadn't really gone in there before, there was just an abundance of berries. Everywhere the bear looked, there was just berries to be eaten. So he would go over there and he'd eat the berries. And then he'd go over there and eat more berries. And then he'd go over there and eat more berries. And then he ate so many berries, he had to have a nap. So he'd sleeping. And he woke up. When he woke up, he realized that he kind of slept a little bit of the afternoon away. And when he noticed that the sun was going down, and he thought, oh my gosh, I need to get out of here. I don't know what's going to happen when the sun goes down. So he was trying to run and trying to find his way out. And as he was trying to find his way out of the forest, he realized he got lost. And as he was trying to find his way out, the sun was setting and setting. And you know how fast the sun sets when you go and watch a sunset. So the next thing you know, the sun's gone. And he's like, oh no. And he's running, and now he can't see, and he's bumping into trees. But what made this forest magical was that at night, the trees would come alive, and they would actually come out of the ground. Just like I said earlier, they would come out, and they would only do this at night because the sun wouldn't allow them to do it during the day. So they only did it at night. But what happened was this bear couldn't see, and he was bumping into the trees, and the trees were like, what is happening? Who is this? Why is there an intruder in our forest? And so all of a sudden this chase started. The trees were chasing after the bear, and the bears are really quick. So the bear was dodging the trees, and this chase lasted all night. And finally, it was really early in the morning, and the sun was about to rise, and the trees knew they had to they were going to get in trouble by the sun, so they knew, but they just had to get this bear out of there. And all of a sudden, one big pine tree with its longest branch reached over and managed to grab the tail of the bear just by the tip of its tail. And with her whole strength, she threw that bear, and that bear ended up in our night sky. And as she threw the bear up there, his tail got stretched. And that's why the handle of the Big Dipper represents the tail of that bear. But when you look at the Big Dipper, there's more to that constellation. So you look really closely, you can see the head. You can actually see the bear running. Okay, his legs are running. So next time you look at that too. So I love those stars. And from the Big Dipper, you can find what's called the North Star, which is a very important star to know, because if you ever get lost and you have no cell phone service, your GPS is not working, you can always depend on those stars. The stars will never let you down. They'll always show you your direction. In fact, a lot of our ancestors a long time ago would wait and specifically travel at night out in Georgian Bay specifically, and use those stars to navigate. So movie that was made a few years ago by Disney was called Moana. And I loved animation, but what I really loved about that movie was they used the stars to navigate. So I love that. And we got a few more minutes left, so I want to tell you one really other quick story. This is a story about a giant who you might know as Kitchikuwana. Probably heard of Kitchikuwana. If you've ever been to Bosley Island, you know that there's a YMCA camp there called Kitchikuwana. Kitchikuwana was a giant, and the Wendat people who lived in our area a long time ago kind of adopted him from a northern community up in the northern shores of Georgian Bay. And they brought him back as a baby. But what happened was this baby kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And very quickly, next thing you knew, that this Kitchikuwana's knees were at like the height of pine trees. Like he was tall. And next thing you know, he was, any games that they would play, Kitchikuwana was always, outrunning everybody. He was always catching the ball. He was always doing. So there were some good things about that, because Kitchikuwana was so high, he could see if there were any enemies coming. And because the Wendat people had this giant living in the village, the Iroquois who were south of here would never come up and attack. So it was kind of good. But there was one winter where Kitchikuwana, it didn't matter what was going on, he was feeling a bit of wrath. He was feeling a bit of anger. And the chiefs in the village, some of the elders said, he might need a wife. I think we need to invite some women who he might be able to choose from, and that might calm him down. It might, starting a family will give him some responsibility, because meanwhile he's seen all his other friends get married and have children, and so he's feeling that frustration of like wanting to fall in love. So there were visitors from different communities that one midwinter social they were having, and Kitchikuwana fell in love with somebody. Her name was Wanakita, and he really, really liked Wanakita. He fell in love with her as soon as he saw her. But the problem is that Wanakita, she wasn't married, but she was in love with somebody else from her own home tribe. So that kind of made Kitchikuwana very upset. And actually, after a couple of months, because they ended up staying for 8 moons, her and her father, because they thought, well, maybe if she stays here for a few months, maybe she'll fall in love with Kitchikuwana. So they stayed, but what happened was it made things worse, because the longer she was away from her love, the worse it was for everybody. So Kitchikuwana was pretty sad when he saw Wanakita and her dad leave. They got in their canoe and they were leaving to go back to their community, to their village. And so what Kitchikuwana did was he was just so upset, he grabbed a big handful of dirt and he threw it at them. And that's actually what created all of the 30,000 islands out in Georgian Bay when you see them. But what happened was he threw it so hard, the canoe went and it tipped over, and Wanakita and her dad fell out of this canoe and they were about to drown, and he knew he did something awful. And so he picked them up and he blew breath back into their life, and he put them back in their canoe and he put them on their way. But he was so sad when he did that. He just sat there in the waters, and then eventually he just laid back and rested. And that's where Giant's Tomb, that's where Kitchikawana lays today, is out in Georgian Bay. You hear of Giant's Tomb. So that's the legend of Giant's Tomb in Kitchikawana. Penetanguishene is an Indigenous word. A lot of people will say that it means rolling white sands. I like to always talk a little bit about our names, because, and even you guys can do this at the museum. Ask kids if they, even adults, ask anybody if they know how to speak Indigenous language. And they will say no, but they do. And, you know, a perfect example is when you will say, well, what province do we live in? We live in Ontario. Ontario means sparkling water. Okay. And we see that beautiful sparkling water every time we go down to that Lake Ontario. Every time I go down to Toronto, I can actually see the sparkling in that water. You can see it sparkling. Okay. Penetanguishene, rolling white sands. I live in Wabashine, where the rocks meet the water. That's what that means. Again, Toronto, Oshawa, Ottawa, these are all Indigenous names. And if you're interested, hopefully you can do your own, do your own little research and find out what those words mean. Even, going further in, the whole country of Canada, that's an Indigenous word. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all these things, they all have a meaning. So, are there any questions before we go? Because holy geez, the hour kind of went by pretty quickly. And yes, I have papers, but don't tell Forrest that. I didn't have them showing, right?
Oh, you're on tape. It's too late, Jen.
Oh, no. I didn't have to refer to them, though. You didn't see my head going down.
Oh, that was really cool, Jen. I haven't gotten the luxury of getting to hear more than, one or two specific stories. So it's nice to hear, I think we all have a lot to learn. So it's nice to get the opportunity to hear some new to us things, right, about the area we live in. So
yeah, for sure. And as far as storytelling goes, there was a time where none of these stories were ever shared, especially in the summertime. There was just too much work to be done. Stories were only told in the winter. And then we weren't allowed to tell stories at all, right? They tried to not let us share anything. But the way I see it now is that we are allowed to share our stories again. So it really doesn't matter what time of the year, as long as there's ears to hear. And as long as there's somebody to actually continue sharing these stories, we're good. We're good to go. So I wanted to thank you all for doing what you're doing. I'm really, really happy to see that. And even if it's virtual, it's a stepping stone. I was telling John, this is great. Maybe might not have been anybody from the outside that came in, but it doesn't matter. It's happening. Yeah. And next year will just be even better if, we can plan a little earlier and we can do things. It doesn't have to be one big day of a celebration. It can be just what we're doing now in more of an in-person setting. The sky's the limit, really. So I'm in the Midland Cultural Center right now. I'm sitting on the stage in Rotary Hall, which is where all the concerts usually take place. Then there's the theater here, the Huronia Theater, where they do all the plays. They're on their summer break now. They won't be doing any more plays now until the fall. But one thing that is happening Saturday here downtown Midland is the annual Butter Tart Festival. And because I've always worked at the Simcoe County Museum for Wheels and Tracks, I've actually never been to the Butter Tart Festival. So I'm actually I'm excited in a way, but I'm not in a certain way, because I'm getting ready. I'm going to be a vendor at June 21st at St. Marie St. Marie Park, their Georgian Bay Native Friendship Center is having their powwow on that day. So I'm getting ready for that too. But yeah, I'm excited to see the people, the crowds. Just keep hearing there's thousands and thousands of people that walk around Midland on that day. We'll see with the air quality that's happening, whether we'll get the crowds. But that's all right if we don't, because I don't really like crowds very much. So
butter tarts are pretty good though, right?
Yeah, butter tarts are pretty good. And actually, last year I begged for us, like, just let me work on the Sunday of Wheels and Tracks because I want to go to the Butter Tart Festival. Okay, so I went to Penetang first, and I was coming back the back roads. And when you come from Penetang to Midland, going the back way, there's a certain area where you're going down, and you can actually see downtown Midland from across the bay. And I looked and I went, oh, yeah, no, let's just go home. Not there at all. So it'll be an interesting day, but I'll tell you all about it on Sunday because we're probably going to come and check out Wheels and Tracks.
All right, I was going to say we have butter tarts here too.
Oh, do you? Oh, yeah, and they're pretty good butter tarts, actually.
Oh yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it.
So
cool. Well, yeah, thanks a lot for doing this, Jen. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and it was really nice to get to see you telling stories again. It's been a long time, so fun.
Yeah, no, it's all fun, and I'm looking forward to the next few weeks and see what you guys have lined up, and it'll be good.
Cool. Yeah, so it's Stephen Brunelle next week.
Stephen Brunelle next week. Good, yeah.
So that'll be exciting. June 15th, and he'll be talking about his journey. That's really exciting too, because I didn't really realize that his things are just kind of starting to take off for him, and it's been kind of nice to see people in your family being excited for him and stuff, and it's really cool. I'm looking forward to it, so that'll be really interesting to hear more. I've seen a little bit, read some stuff online a little bit, but it'll be really cool to get to kind of hear him tell his own story and kind of share that journey with everybody. So looking forward to that.
Oh, good. Yeah, he's really come a long way. And COVID, when we look back at COVID and we think back of the hard times we had during COVID, although I struggled a little bit through COVID here and there, but when I reflect back, so much positivity came out of COVID. So much happened. My mind thoughts changed. Being redeployed, that whole experience changed me. And of course my mom passing away, that changed me. But just everything, just so many things happening in the last 2 years, and it's all positive. So when I look back, and you have to look at things positively, because if you don't, then it's gonna bring you down, and you're gonna live a miserable life if you just keep thinking negative and picking out all the negative things. So look at the positive things and look at the right side of life.
Yeah, look at you. You look like you're in a theater show too, you're
oh my God,
your one-woman show.
About 10 minutes before I came in, Hunter and I walked in here, and I went, oh my gosh, somebody shut all the lights, and I didn't know how to turn them on. And then I went into the actual theater, the theater, and the doors were open. I went, oh my God, maybe I can use a theater, but the lights were off. I didn't know how to turn them on. I'm like, to go find somebody. I'm like, can somebody turn the lights on? Jeez.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anyway, so anyway, Miigwech, thank you for having me. And if you guys have any questions, just email me, or I'll see you guys on Sunday. And
that'd be nice.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and hope everybody's breathing okay with the weirdness of the smoke that we're having out there. And I don't know what it's like in Barrie. It's probably the same as it is here. What's really eerie is it looks even worse on the water. When you look out into Georgian Bay, it's you can't even see the land from where you could see across. You can't see. It's just this heavy, dense smog. Yeah.
Yeah, I had friends who said it's really bad in Toronto. So like a little bit farther south sounds worse
Actually,
too.
right
Yeah.
on the shores of Lake Ontario, where Toronto is where it's purple. That's supposed to be like the really bad area.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even just like walking around the property here on lunches, and it's like I could smell wood smoke and it's really hazy, like the sky is hazy.
Yeah.
And then but I thought it was the bread oven here.
Oh.
And then I got farther and farther, like I got farther and farther away. It's like, I can still smell it. Like, I don't think it's the bread oven. And yeah, it's just, everywhere. It's just crazy that that's, affecting everybody right now. Right. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool though. I like the smell of smoke.
It just, it just has bad, it's the wrong kind of reason to be smelling it, right? It's not somebody having a campfire. It's like something horrible going on somewhere else, right? So
I know, but it's funny because I was quickly reminded, and I'll give you guys all of this to think. And this is something you already know, but Hunter graduated with forestry degree from Fleming, but she quickly reminded me yesterday because I'm like, oh my God, that's so bad. Like, oh my God, forest fires. And she goes, it is bad in a way because people are suffering with, trying to breathe, and it's getting close to communities, and people have lost their homes and this and that. But Mother Earth will rejuvenate itself, and this is one way that it's doing it. And as bad as fires are, what will happen is all of this regrowth underneath it, all of the new plants and berries and trees and shrubs that will come from all of those ashes, because that's good nutrients for the ground, right? So it's all good. It's just us humans have put ourselves in a situation where we've lived too close to the forest. Maybe we're careless and we, flick a cigarette and it lights it up. Whatever the reasons are, now we're living with it. So last summer, was it Greece that was burning up? And I remember thinking, oh, that'd be awful. And now we're dealing with it here. So
yeah.
Anyway, I hope everybody has a really safe weekend, and I will see you all soon.
Cool. Thanks so much, Jen.
All right.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye,
Okay. Yeah, take care.
Take care.